The first time I realized my neighbor wasn't just taking pictures of my house, I was standing in my kitchen at midnight, staring at a photograph that should never have existed. A photograph of my bedroom window, a photograph of my wife standing inside, and in the reflection of the glass, behind her, a man who had been dead for 23 years. I didn't know what scared me more, the fact that someone had been watching my family every night or the fact that my neighbor was the only person trying to warn me. But before I understood the truth, I had to discover why a quiet old man had spent 47 days secretly photographing my home, and why he seemed more afraid of my family than I was. My name is Daniel Carter. I was 42 years old when all of this happened. Before that night, I believed I had built the kind of life people spend years chasing. A stable job, a comfortable house, a wife I had loved for almost 15 years, and a daughter who made every difficult day worth surviving. I worked as a construction engineer for a local company. My days were filled with deadlines, angry contractors, and endless meetings, but I never complained. I liked routine. Routine made me feel safe. Every morning at 6:30, I drank coffee at the same kitchen table. Every evening at 7 o'clock, I watered the old apple tree in our backyard. That tree was older than my daughter. I planted it the year before Alice was born. My wife, Marina, used to laugh at me because I treated that tree like it was another member of our family. "You know it can survive without you, right?" She would joke. Maybe she was right, but I liked knowing there was something in my life that needed me, because lately, I had started feeling like fewer and fewer things did, especially Marina. I couldn't point to one specific moment when she changed. That would have been easier. There was no huge argument, no dramatic confession, no obvious betrayal. She just slowly became someone I didn't recognize. She stopped asking about my day. She started keeping her phone face down whenever I entered the room. She began taking calls outside, and whenever I asked if something was wrong, she gave me the same answer. "I'm just tired." At first, I believed her. People get tired. People change. Marriage goes through difficult periods. I told myself that because the alternative was too painful. The alternative was admitting that the woman sleeping beside me every night might be hiding something, and I had always had one weakness. I avoided problems until they became impossible to ignore. I convinced myself that silence meant peace. I was wrong. The first time I saw my new neighbor, I didn't think much of him. His name was Victor Hale. He moved into the old house across the street after his wife passed away. He was around 65 years old. A quiet man. The type who always said hello but never stayed long enough for a real conversation. The neighbors described him as strange, not dangerous, just strange. "He watches everything," one of them told me. I laughed. Everyone watches everything in a small neighborhood, but I remembered those words later. Because they were true. Victor did watch everything. The first few weeks, I barely noticed him, until one evening. I was washing dishes after dinner when I looked through the kitchen window. Across the street, behind the curtains of his upstairs room, I saw him, standing perfectly still, holding a camera. At first, I thought he was photographing the sunset. Then, I realized where the camera was pointed, at my house. I stopped moving. Victor took one picture, then another, then another. Not of the street, not of the trees, not of the sky, my house. I dried my hands and walked closer to the window. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe he was taking pictures of the neighborhood. Maybe I was imagining things. But then Victor lowered the camera, looked directly at my bedroom window, and took one final picture. A picture of where Marina and I slept. That was the moment my stomach tightened. Because people don't accidentally photograph someone's bedroom. The next morning, I decided to confront him. Not angrily, at least that was the plan. I walked across the street while Victor was trimming the bushes in his front yard. "Victor?" He looked up. His expression was calm, almost too calm. "Daniel?" The fact that he knew my name bothered me. "How long have you been taking pictures of my house?" For a moment, the garden shears stopped moving, only for a second. But I saw it, a flash of fear. Then it disappeared. "I don't know what you mean." I stared at him. "You were photographing my house last night." He looked away. "Yes." The direct answer surprised me. "Why?" Victor placed the shears on the ground. Then he looked across the street. "At my house, not at me. At my house." I needed to make sure something hadn't changed. I frowned. "What does that mean?" He stayed silent. "Victor, if you have a problem with me, just say it." He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes wasn't anger. It wasn't obsession. It was regret. "I don't have a problem with you, Daniel." "Then what is this?" He took a breath. "A warning." My heart started beating faster. About what? But before he answered, he looked toward my front door, the door where Marina was standing, watching us, and Victor immediately stopped talking. That scared me more than anything he had said, because it meant he wasn't afraid of me finding out. He was afraid of her hearing. That evening, I asked Marina about Victor. I tried to sound casual. "Do you know our new neighbor?" She looked up from her dinner. "Victor?" The way she said his name made me notice something. Recognition. Not surprise. Recognition. "You know him?" She quickly looked back at her plate. "No. I mean, I've seen him." That's not what I asked. A small silence filled the room. Alice, our daughter, looked between us. She felt the tension. Kids always do. "Why are you asking about him?" Marina said. I watched her carefully. "Because he's been taking pictures of our house." The color slowly disappeared from her face. Not shock, not confusion. Fear, real fear. And before she could answer, Alice spoke. "Dad." We both turned. She was holding her fork tightly. "What?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Victor came to my school yesterday." The room became completely silent. "What did he want?" I asked. Alice looked at Marina, then at me. "He asked me if I knew someone named Andrew." I froze, because there was only one Andrew who mattered. My older brother, my dead brother. The man my family stopped talking about 23 years ago. "What did you say?" I said no. "And what did he say?" Alice swallowed. "He said..." She looked uncomfortable. "He said, 'That's sad. Your father still doesn't know the truth.'" I didn't hear anything after that. Not the television. Not the sound of dishes. Not Marina asking me what was wrong. Because one thought was louder than everything else. Victor knew about Andrew, and somehow he believed I didn't. That night, I opened the box I had kept hidden in the back of my closet for years. Inside were old photographs, documents, letters, memories I never allowed myself to revisit. At the bottom was a picture of Andrew. My brother was smiling, 23 years younger, alive. On the back of the photo, my mother had written a sentence I had never noticed before. He was supposed to come home that night. I read it again and again, because suddenly, the story I had been told my entire life had a missing piece. Andrew wasn't supposed to die that night. He was supposed to return home, which meant someone knew he wouldn't, and someone had been lying to me for 23 years. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, 1 sentence, 5 words. "Ask your wife about Andrew." I stared at the screen, and for the first time in my life, I wondered if the person I trusted most was the person I should have feared. I spent the entire night staring at that message. "Ask your wife about Andrew." 5 words, that was all. No name, no explanation, no proof, just a sentence designed to destroy the one thing I had always trusted, my own judgment. By morning, I had convinced myself there had to be another explanation. Someone was playing a cruel game. Someone wanted to create problems in my marriage. Maybe Victor was unstable. Maybe he was obsessed with the past. Maybe he had confused me with someone else. I repeated those possibilities because they were easier to accept than the truth. The truth was that Marina might know something about my brother's death. And she had never told me. I looked at her sleeping beside me. For 15 years, I had believed I knew every part of her, her favorite songs, the way she hated thunderstorms, the way she cried during emotional movies, but pretended she didn't. I knew the small things, but suddenly I wondered if I knew the important things at all. At breakfast, Marina acted normal. That was the part that bothered me the most. She poured coffee. She packed Alice's lunch. She asked me if I remembered to pay the electricity bill. Normal. Everything looked normal, but I noticed something. Her hands were shaking slightly, not enough for anyone else to see. But I saw it, because I had spent 15 years watching her. "Marina." She stopped cutting bread. "Yeah? Do you remember my brother Andrew?" The knife touched the plate, a small sound, but loud enough. She looked at me, and for a moment I saw something I had never seen before. Fear, not sadness, not grief. Fear. "Why are you asking me that?" I kept my voice calm. "Because Victor knows his name." Her expression changed immediately. "Victor?" "Yes." "What did he tell you?" I leaned back. There it was. Not "what does he know?" Not "why would he say that?" She asked what he told me, like she already knew there was something to tell. "Why are you so interested in what he said?" She looked away. "I'm not." Another lie. A small one, but still a lie. And suddenly I remembered something I had ignored for years. Marina had never asked questions about Andrew, not once. When we started dating, she knew I had lost my brother. She knew it hurt me, but she never asked how it happened. I always thought she was being respectful. Now I wondered if she was avoiding the subject. After dropping Alice at school, I drove straight to Victor's house. I needed answers. Not hints, not mysterious messages. Answers. He opened the door before I knocked. That surprised me, almost like he had been expecting me. "You saw the message," he said. I froze. "How do you know?" Victor looked tired. "Because I sent it." The anger came instantly. "You sent a message to my phone?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because you were never going to ask." I stepped closer. "You don't know me." Victor looked at me for a long moment. Then he said something that made me stop. "I knew your brother." Silence. The anger disappeared, replaced by something much heavier. "Tell me what happened." Victor looked behind me, checking the street. Then he opened the door wider. "Come inside." His house smelled like old books and coffee. The walls were covered with photographs. Most were landscapes, mountains, rivers, cities. But on one wall, hidden behind a bookshelf, I noticed something. A picture frame turned face down. I walked toward it. Victor immediately stepped in front of me. "Don't." That reaction told me everything. "What's in that picture?" He didn't answer. Instead, he sat down. 23 years ago, your brother came to me." "Why?" "He was scared." I laughed bitterly. "My brother wasn't scared of anything." Victor looked at me. "That was the problem with Andrew." He paused. He thought being brave meant never admitting fear. Those words sounded exactly like something my brother would do. "What was he scared of?" Victor looked at his hands. "Your father." I felt my body become cold. "My father?" "Yes, that's impossible." "Is it?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to defend the memory of my family. But I remembered my mother's words. Some people return not for truth, for revenge. "What did my father do?" Victor didn't answer immediately, and that silence made me nervous. "Before I tell you, you need to understand something." "What?" "Your brother wasn't killed because of an accident." I stopped breathing. "Then how?" Victor looked directly at me. "He found something." "What?" "He found out your family wasn't what it appeared to be." I left Victor's house with more questions than answers. That was the worst part. I expected him to reveal everything. I expected a clear story. Instead, he gave me pieces, fragments, enough to create fear, not enough to create certainty, and uncertainty is dangerous because when you don't know the truth, your mind creates one. On the drive home, I started thinking about everyone. My father, my mother, Marina, even myself. Who had lied? Who had known? And how long had this secret been buried? When I arrived home, Marina was in the living room. She looked surprised to see me. "You left work early." "I needed to talk." Her expression changed. "About Victor?" I didn't answer. Instead, I asked, "Did you know Andrew before he died?" The question hit harder than I expected. Marina slowly sat down. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then, "Yes." The room became silent, a simple word, but it changed everything. "You knew him?" She nodded. "How?" "I met him before I met you." I stared at her. "That doesn't make sense." "It does." "Marina, you told me you met me in college." "I did." "Then how did you know Andrew?" She looked down. "I knew him when I was 17. My heart started beating faster. "Why didn't you tell me?" Because I had no answer, and neither did she. Finally, she whispered, "Because Andrew asked me not to." That sentence made no sense. "My dead brother asked you not to tell me?" She closed her eyes. He knew something was going to happen. I felt anger rising. "Marina, stop speaking in riddles." She looked at me, and for the first time in 15 years, my wife looked like a stranger. "Your brother didn't die that night, Daniel." The words were impossible. I waited for her to smile, to tell me she was joking. She didn't. "What did you just say?" "He survived the crash." My hands became numb. "No." "Yes." "No. I saw the funeral." "You saw what they wanted you to see." I stood up. "You're telling me my brother was alive?" "For a short time." "Where was he?" Marina's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know." That answer made me angrier. "You knew he was alive and you did nothing?" "I was 17. "You could have told someone." I tried. She raised her voice for the first time. I tried to tell your mother. I tried to tell your father. I tried to find him. She wiped her tears. But every person who looked for Andrew disappeared from his life. I stared at her. Who disappeared? She looked toward the window, toward Victor's house, and quietly said, everyone who got too close. That evening, I went back through the old photographs. I searched for anything connected to Andrew, anything I had missed. Then I found something. A picture from my 18th birthday. My family standing outside our house. My father, my mother, Andrew, me, and behind us, standing near the fence, was Victor, 23 years younger, watching us. I zoomed in. There was something in his hand. A camera. The same one he used now. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. No one spoke, only breathing. Then a voice I had never heard before, but a voice that changed my life forever. Daniel. I froze, because the voice said my name like it had known me forever. Then it whispered, your neighbor is lying to you. A pause. And so is your wife. The call ended. I stood there holding the phone, caught between two people, two stories, two possible truths, and the terrifying realization that one of them had to be lying, but I didn't know which one. Not yet. For the next 3 days, I stopped trusting everyone. That was the worst part. Not the secrets, not the lies, not even the possibility that my entire life had been built on something false. The worst part was waking up every morning and looking at the people around me, wondering which version of them was real. My wife, my mother, my neighbor, even myself. Because if everyone had hidden the truth from me for 23 years, how could I be sure I wasn't hiding something from myself? I started with the person I thought I could understand the least. Victor. I waited until evening, the same time he usually stood near his window with his camera, but this time I didn't walk across the street angry. I walked there desperate, because anger comes from certainty, and I had none left. Victor opened the door before I knocked. You found the picture. I stopped. How did you know? Because that picture was the reason I moved here. Those words made me step back. You moved here because of my family? He nodded. For 23 years, I carried something I promised your brother I would protect. I clenched my jaw. My brother is dead. Victor looked at me sadly. That's what they wanted everyone to believe. I entered his house. This time, I didn't ask permission. I needed the truth. Victor sat down and opened a small wooden box. Inside were dozens of photographs, letters, documents, all connected to Andrew. He came to me the night of the accident. Victor said, Why you? Because I was the only person who believed him. Believed what? Victor looked at the papers. That your father was involved in illegal construction deals. I froze. My father had owned a construction company. The same company where I worked years later. He discovered your father was covering up dangerous building failures. People were getting hurt. Your brother found evidence. I shook my head. My father wasn't perfect, but he wasn't a criminal. Victor didn't argue. He simply said, That's what Andrew believed too. I looked at him. What changed? He found the documents. A silence filled the room. Then why didn't he expose him? Victor's expression changed. Because your brother discovered something worse. What? He discovered your father wasn't working alone. My stomach tightened. Who was helping him? Victor didn't answer. Instead, he pushed a photograph toward me. It was old. A meeting. 4 people standing outside a building. My father, a businessman I recognized from the news, a lawyer, and my mother. I stared at the image. No. Victor watched my reaction. Your mother knew. The room felt smaller. No. I repeated it. But this time I wasn't convincing him. I was trying to convince myself. I went home without saying goodbye. Because suddenly I needed to hear my mother's voice. I called her. She answered after 3 rings. Daniel. Mom. She immediately knew. What happened? I looked at the photograph in my hand. You knew about Andrew. Silence. A long silence. Then, yes. The honesty hurt more than another lie would have. Why? My voice cracked. Why did you let me believe he was dead? She started crying, and for the first time in my life, I heard my mother sound weak. Because I thought I was protecting you. Protecting me? Yes. From what? A pause. From the same people who took Andrew away. My breathing stopped. Who? But before she answered, she said something unexpected. Daniel, Victor didn't tell you everything. I closed my eyes. Of course. Another secret, another missing piece. What didn't he tell me? My mother whispered. Andrew didn't die because he discovered your father's crime. Then why? He died because he discovered who betrayed him. The line went silent. Who? But she had already hung up. That night, Marina found me sitting in the dark. She didn't ask what happened. She already knew. You talked to Victor. I looked at her. You knew everything. She sat across from me. Not everything. Enough. Her eyes filled with tears. I was 17, Daniel. I don't care anymore. The words came out harsher than I intended, but I couldn't stop. You knew my brother was alive. For a few hours. What? Marina took a deep breath. The accident happened near my house. I was the first person who found him. My heart stopped. Andrew was alive? Yes. Why didn't you call an ambulance? Her face broke. I did. Then what happened? She looked at me. Your father arrived before the ambulance. The room became silent. What did he do? Marina looked down. He told Andrew that everything would be okay. And he took him away. I stood up. Where? I don't know. But you saw him? Yes. How long? She wiped her tears. Long enough for Andrew to give me something. What? She reached into her drawer and pulled out a small envelope. My name was written on it. My hands started shaking. Why do you have this? Because Andrew told me not to give it to you unless you were ready. Ready for what? Marina looked at me. To know that your brother wasn't the victim. I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. Andrew's handwriting. The first line destroyed everything I believed. Daniel, if you are reading this, it means I failed to protect you. I kept reading. Andrew wrote that our father wasn't the only person involved. The person helping him was someone much closer, someone everyone trusted, someone who had access to everything. The final sentence made my hands freeze. The person who caused my accident was not trying to kill me. They were trying to scare me. The person who finished what they started was someone who loved me. I looked up. Who? Marina was crying. I don't know. But her eyes moved, not toward me, toward the photograph on the table, the old photograph, the one with my mother, and suddenly I understood. The next morning I went to Victor's house, but this time I didn't go for answers. I went to confront him. You knew. Victor looked at me. You found the letter. You knew Marina had it. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because I needed you to find the truth yourself. I laughed. You manipulated me. Yes. The honesty surprised me. You used me. Yes. Why? Victor looked older than ever. Because Andrew trusted me with one final request. What request? To make sure you never became like him. I frowned. What does that mean? Victor looked toward my house. Andrew spent his life trying to expose people who hurt others, but in the end, revenge destroyed him. He looked back at me. He didn't want you to spend your life chasing revenge. I was silent. Then I asked, who betrayed him? Victor closed his eyes and said, the person who loved him most. That afternoon I returned home. My mother was there. Marina was there. For the first time, everyone who knew the truth was in the same room. I placed Andrew's letter on the table. Nobody spoke. Then, my mother finally broke. It was me. The words were quiet, almost impossible to hear. Marina covered her mouth. I couldn't move. What? My mother cried. I didn't cause the accident. Then what? I found Andrew after your father took him. My voice shook. And he was going to expose everything. She looked at me. He was going to destroy the family. You mean he was going to reveal the truth? Yes. Then why stop him? My mother looked at the floor. Because your father threatened you. Everything went silent. He said if Andrew talked, you would lose everything. She wiped her tears. I made the worst decision of my life. She didn't kill Andrew. But she helped hide the truth. She chose fear over honesty, and that choice destroyed everyone. Years later, I still think about that camera. The camera I once believed represented danger, but it wasn't a weapon. It was a reminder. Victor photographed my house every night because he was looking for something. Not evidence, not secrets, a sign. A sign that my family still had a chance to tell the truth. My father lost everything after the evidence became public. My mother spent years trying to forgive herself. Marina and I survived, but our marriage had to be rebuilt from nothing. And me? I finally learned the lesson Andrew tried to leave behind. Sometimes the biggest betrayal isn't when someone hurts you. It's when someone loves you so much that they convince themselves a lie is better than the truth. If you were in Daniel's place, would you forgive a family member who hid the truth for 23 years to protect you? Write your opinion in the comments.